Hey there guys, this is DW96 from groovyPost.com, and today we're going to go in depth through a lot of Photoshop features that you will need to know as a beginning, since we're going to be covering the basics of Photoshop. So go ahead and open up Photoshop. I have a little example document here on which we're going to be working when we're giving examples of things. So the first thing that you're going to notice is that here on my right side I am surrounded by all these different types of panels used for different things. We have navigator, history, adjustments, layers, and masks. And the layers, channels, and paths. So this is usually what I work with, but you would normally, when you start up Photoshop, you would be brought with the Essentials workspace. So clicking on that will make some changes here on the right side where my workspace is. Clicking on the other workspaces, here we have Design, Painting. You can see as I am changing my workspace, all the different panels that are laid out change themselves. So I'm gonna go back to my personal workspace here, and I would advise you to create your own workspace based on what you use Photoshop for the most. So no matter what kind of a workspace you're working with, I would highly advise you to keep in the layers panel and your history panel open out all the time, because you're going to be needing these two all the time. And start out with the Essentials workspace. As I was saying, click on Window, and from here you can choose all of the things that you would want in your workspace. So go ahead and start checking on or off all things you would and would not want. And when you're finished, simply click on this small arrow here and select New Workspace. Now you can give your workspace a name. And of course, if you've made some additional preferences, such as changing and customizing your keyboard shortcuts and your menus, you can save those assigned to your personal workspace as well. Now I've already set up my own workspace, so I won't be saving a new one. I'm just going to go back to my previous one. Now let's start covering the tools all one by one. The first tool, which you will see at the very top of your tools, is the Move tool. It will simply allow you to pick up an object and move it wherever you want. Really not much explanation needed here. Underneath the Move tool is the rectangular marquee tool. Along with the other marquee tools, you can use these tools to make yourself various selections. You can see as I am doing right now. So these are the tools you're going to be using to make precise selections, and as you saw, when I select a part of my image, we get the very popular and well-known marching ants, which indicate that this area is currently selected. So now let's deselect this and go to the next tools in this category: the Lasso tool, Polygonal Lasso, and Magnetic Lasso tools 2. With the Lasso tool, you will be allowed to make a freehand selection. You can see I'm drawing 100% freehand right now, and I will make myself a selection like this. Polygonal Lasso tool, you can make a little bit more of an edgy selection, making a click every time you want a edge or say anchor point. And last and definitely not least is the Magnetic Lasso tool. You can simply click once and then roll around the part which you want selected, and Photoshop itself will be making the anchor points for you. Now this current image that I have brought up here is not the perfect example for using the Magnetic Lasso tool, but you will find the Magnetic Lasso tool very useful for when you are trying to make a selection around the contour of something. Next up is the Quick Selection tool and the Magic Wand tool. With the Quick Selection tool, you can simply use a brush and you will start drawing around just a small bit. of the part where you want something selected, and Photoshop will automatically add in the rest of your selection based on a guess. And here we have the magic wand tool, really great for selecting single color areas. For example, see, clicking on this shade of purple, Photoshop has automatically selected all of the purple shades in this area. So that's it with the magic wand tool. Moving along, we have crop tool and the two slice tools. The crop tool is used for cropping your image, obviously, and the slice tool is used for when you want to differentiate between the different parts of your image. You can slice up your image. This mostly works if you're working on web pages. You can slice up your image into different parts and categories. Now here we have the eyedropper tool, color sampler tool, ruler tool, note tool, and count tool. With the eyedropper tool, you can eyedrop off of a color in your image. Say, if I click and hold here, I will, at the top of this little circle ring here, I will be shown the color that I am selecting. So say I want this exact orange right here, and when I let go, you will see that it is added as my foreground color. With the color sampler tool, you can obviously sample colors. The ruler tool will allow you to measure distances in your image without just jumping through a bunch of hoops. Very useful if you're going to be making some more advanced drawings. The note tool will allow you to add a recording in your Photoshop document. So this is pretty cool if you're working on a team and you need to send each other PSD documents. And last we have the count tool. So this is the count tool. Simply clicking on one place would name would give a number. So say this is like part 1 of my image, this is part 2, and this is part 3. I can simply put numbers on my canvas like this with the count tool. That's the count tool. And moving along to the second category, we have the spot healing brush tool, patch tool, and RedEye tool. Spot healing brush tool. Now let's give this one a little bit more time, since this is CS5 and a new feature was introduced called content aware filling. Now with content aware fill, you can easily make a better guess at what you're filling when you're trying to repair that bad part of your image that really didn't go as well as you planned. It's very useful. It works very good in CS5, but of course if you want to go back and use the old school spot healing brush, you can always click proximity match and you would go to the old school type of masking up problematic areas. And of course there is create texture, the second mode, which allows you to make a guess about filling in with a texture if you're working on a texture document. Now I will leave mine on content aware because that simply works best for me. Going on down here, we have the patch tool. Just like patching up your jeans, for example, you can just select an area of your image and patch it up with a different area, like so. It takes some time, but you can see it patched it up pretty accordingly, like so. I'm gonna bring this back now, and that's the patch tool. And the RedEye tool, if you like taking a lot of photos, you may notice red eye in some of the photos that you've taken of you and your friends. Well, Photoshop is prepared for that too. With the RedEye tool, it will easily allow you to reduce red eye in your images. Here we have the brush tool, pencil tool, color replacement, and mixer brush tool. Brush tool, really not much explanation needed here. It's simply a brush. You can draw with it, and as you saw in one of my previous tutorials, the brush tool is fully customizable with the brush panel over here. You even have some brushes that come with Photoshop. You can also make your own, of course. You have the pencil tool. If you have used Microsoft Paint, you would know exactly how this tool draws. It makes a very edgy type of drawing, and it is usually from 1 to 4 or 5 points or pixels in size. So very nice if you like drawing outlines and if you don't want a tool as smooth as the brush tool. We have color replacement tool. It simply replaces one color with another as you are painting over it. And we have, last and definitely not least, mixer brush tool in this category. Now clicking on the mixer brush tool, here you see we have a whole lot of options. We can choose how wet, how loaded, how mixed, and what amount of flow our brush has. So this is for when you want to really get artistic with your Photoshop drawings. I recommend this to anyone who would be making tablet drawings on Photoshop. Moving along, we have clone stamp tool and pattern stamp tool. Now the clone stamp tool is actually pretty easy. Going on to my layer here, I'm going to decrease my brush a little bit and I'll sample off of this area. I'll just click to sample, and as I start drawing up here, it would simply be sampling from where I alt plus clicked down below. So you can see it's a very useful tool, not just for creating interesting effects. You can also use this for cleaning out parts in an image that went bad. Very interesting tool. And the pattern stamp tool, which will clean everything up with a pattern built in Photoshop, or one by your choice. You can make yourself your own patterns. Moving along, we have the history brush tool, which will allow you to paint over parts of your image, and where you have selected in your history, you will paint over with the previous state of your image. So I've already selected the part of my image which is the previous state that I want to be painting over with. Now since I don't have the appropriate layers to demonstrate this, I'm currently not painting over everything, but trust me, this is a great tool if you don't want to be using your history panel all the time. We have the art history brush tool. This is pretty much the one which you're going to be using for your more artistic effects, because just like the mixer brush tool, it has some additional settings from which you can choose here, so very interesting. We have the eraser tools, background eraser, magic eraser, and the regular one. With them you can simply enough erase parts of your image. With the background eraser tool you can easily erase parts of your background, and the magic eraser tool will quickly clean up large single color areas. For example, if I click here, you can see it's already starting to erase those single shade purples. Okay, moving on, we have gradient tool and paint bucket tool. Now the background that you see here, barely noticeable, I've made it, but is actually a slow fade from white to gray. If I bring up the contrast, you would probably see it, but gradient tool is pretty awesome. You can make yourself your own gradients, or just pick from one of the few that come with Photoshop. So let's just quickly demonstrate this. Just like that, I've made a smooth gradient between some browns and some lighter colors. Going back here, we again, as I said, we have the paint bucket tool. Again, if you've used Microsoft Paint, you would know what this is. Simply fills in a single color area with a color of your choice. Now we have the blur tool, sharpen tool, and smudge tools. They do whatever their names say. Probably we should just give some more attention to the smudge tool and the sharpen tool. Now I would advise you not to use the sharpen tool too much. Why? Well, I will just show you. If I zoom in here and I start using the sharpen tool, and just with a couple of strokes, you can see I already have a pretty serious amount of color contamination, so you would not want that in your image, definitely. So don't really go using the sharpen tool too much. And as I said, the smudge tool, imagine that everything you're currently working on is a wet canvas. You just took your finger and you smudged down a part of your image, just like that. You can see I'm currently smudging it. A pretty interesting tool for creating effects. and it's great for drawings. Last tools in this category, Dodge, Burn, and Sponge tool. The Dodge tool will make things quite brighter. You can see as I'm painting over with it right now, it's making things way brighter. The Burn tool will do the exact opposite. It will make things darker. But again, be aware the Burn tool does the same thing that the Sharpen tool does. It can bring color contamination, so avoid Burn tool too much. And we have the Sponge tool. Painting over with the Sponge tool will desaturate your colors a whole lot, I would say. You can see as I keep on painting here, we've already started getting to a gray color. So you use the Sponge tool for desaturation of colors. That's it with this category. Moving on to the next, we have our pen tools, which we're going to be using for making paths. So the pen tool is really easy to work with. Just drawing your lines very easily. I've just created a path right here. So you can use all the pen tools for creating your paths, and you can view your paths from the paths panel, which is usually stacked up with the channels and layers. We have horizontal and vertical type tools and horizontal and vertical type mask tools. Now the first two need no explanation. It's simply adding text to your image, but the second two are worth giving some special attention to. So let's go ahead and click here. No matter what I write, I'm just gonna give this one as an example, and instead of adding text, Photoshop made a selection around the text that would have usually came out. Now this is a very interesting tool to be added in Photoshop. You can make some very interesting effects with this if you're going to be working with text, and if you like working with selections and with text, this is a tool which is going to appeal to you very much. Moving on, we have Path Selection Tool and Direct Selection Tool. Not much needs to be said here. These are some basic mouse cursors with which you're going to be selecting all your paths. We have the Shape tools here up next. We have some rectangles. You can see, again, just like in Microsoft Paint, you can draw yourself shapes. And we also have Line tool and Custom Shape tool for drawing your own things. Moving on to the next category, we have some 3D tools here. Now for this, I'm going to need to enable a 3D layer that I previously made. So here's my 3D layer. Picking up any of the 3D rotation tools, I will be able to rotate my 3D layer. Here we also have the roll tool, some other tools. So these are pretty much the ones which are moving your object itself. And here we have the actual camera rotations. You can use different cameras to look at your 3D object. So pretty much these are the tools you're going to be using for 3D. Now let's disable the 3D object, turn on the regular image. Moving on to the next tools, Hand tool and Rotate View tool. Hand tool is pretty basic. If you're really zoomed into an image, you're going to have to pan across left and right. Well, that's what the hand tool is for. It's just like if you were in a PDF document. If you have worked with a lot of PDF documents, you would most likely like the hand tool for moving around the most. And we have the Rotate View tool. Now this is one very interesting tool. If you're gonna be doing a lot of drawings in Photoshop, this is a tool which will certainly appeal to you. You know how when you draw almost naturally you tend to turn the sheet of paper to make a straighter line or for more comfort? Well, you can do that in Photoshop too. Very simply, you can even turn the sheet of paper over and over again. Very nice and easy to use if you're gonna be drawing and doing tablet drawings on Photoshop. And the last tools we have here, the last tool actually is the Zoom tool. So the zoom tool is pretty basically you click, you drag, and you get zoomed in into the area which you have selected. But Photoshop CS5 added a new type of zoom feature called scrubby zoom. Pretty easy to work with. Simply click and drag to the right to zoom in, and click and drag to the left to zoom out. It's as simple as that. But personally, this feature doesn't really appeal to me, so I'm going to turn it off, so you can use whatever you want. Now, going on to the other features we have here, this small button here will change to the default foreground and background colors. Foreground is black, and it will make your background white. Here, of course, with these buttons, you can change your foreground and background colors. With this button, you change your foreground and background colors. You switch them one another, just like that. Pretty simple. And the last button we have in the tool section is editing in the quick mask mode. Pretty simple. You gotta get yourself a brush, and what you paint over will not be added in your selection. So say I paint over this area of the image, and when I exit out of the quick mask mode, you see whatever I did not paint over was not added in my selection. So there you have it. Those are all of the tools. And now moving on to the final part of this tutorial, I'm gonna give you some tips on adjusting performance. Now I want you to go to Edit, Preferences, and go to Performance. And from here you can see some settings, pretty geeky settings, if you want to get the maximum amount of performance when you're using Photoshop. With this little slider, you can adjust just how much RAM Photoshop uses every time it's turned on. So I have 4 gigs of RAM, obviously, and I like to keep my Photoshop usage of RAM pretty high because I'm using Photoshop very often. And in the history and cache section, you have 3 presets for your history and your cache, but I've decided to bring everything all the way up. You can have up to 1,000 history states, so you can bring up to 1,000 steps back in history on the document you are working for. You have your cache levels and your cache title size. So I like to bring these all the way up for the maximum flexibility of my history. And here you can see, since I have an external hard drive, you can use your external hard drives or other hard drives as scratch disks, where Photoshop will temporarily save files in order for its usage. So I have set only my C drive to be my scratch disk. If you have multiple hard drives, you can enable them as well. And here you can enable or disable GL drawings. We have some advanced settings here. You can turn on VSync and anti-aliasing. Even if you're with a slower computer, you should definitely keep these on so that most things appear as smooth as possible. And well, that's about it. When you're done configuring everything with your performance preferences, simply click OK, and everything will be saved to your workspace. So thank you for watching this groovy tutorial on some of the basics that everyone needs to know about Photoshop. Stay tuned for some more Photoshop video tutorials and how-tos, and thank you for watching.